This is part 3 of my series about Grenfell Tower fire. The after response from the government. So Theresa May was severely criticised for her absolutely cold, rigid, emotionless and too little, too late response, and for not properly visiting the people. She did some kind of quick appearance and then ran away like a little mouse, later citing security concerns. I mean, what security concerns was she truly facing? Just some like angry people because they have dead relatives in the fire. Was she that much of a coward? This was seen as incredibly weak, rude and heartless. The people were completely let down and angry, rightfully. They felt that they were not worth a visit, care or help. People feel she was extremely incompetent and should withdraw from office. She was accused of gross negligence and many were losing faith in the Conservative Party and their austerity regime. Artificial forms of help were eventually put in, but it was too little, too late, and not good enough. The whole response was very badly handled and managed, and it was highly noticeable. Phone numbers, so helplines that were given out through the media, were badly managed. They were not even on. A victim who desperately needed help got a voice message saying that no one was there to man the calls, even though the number was just placed on TV. Inaccurate information was given to people through media. We were told lies. This applies to both victims and the public at large and all around the world through global media, controlled, of course, by people in power, agenda and fortune. It is a fact that these people were completely neglected and treated like third-class citizens. Those affected were desperately trying to get information about their loved ones, whether they were dead or injured, where are they? In the days and even more than a week after the fire, but they were turned away or simply did not know where to go or who to turn to. There was nothing set up for them as there normally would be in any other crisis situation. It was like they were just completely ignored, left to rot. There were no supportive services, clear instructions or information, resources, any kind of organisational structures immediately put into place to direct victims and their families and friends. Instead, it was the local community that came together. They provided food, water, clothing, toiletries, hugs, support, accommodation, assistance of every kind. People were amazing. They were on the street helping each other. The streets were crowded, donations were overflowing from people, regular people, as well as churches, mosques, and people were opening up their homes to strangers. They were taking in victims who they did not know in person, from the goodness of their hearts, because they felt compassion towards these people and just the awful reality of this event. The death toll was totally inaccurate, played down and confusing, like they wanted to deliberately make it look less and cover it up or wait for the hype to die down before revealing the real truth and enormity of the situation, if ever that actually come to be. They kept referring to the dead or injured people as missing, and this is just utterly ridiculous. This is something that particularly irritates me and many other people. It was completely upsetting, especially for the people trying to find their loved ones in desperation. Why call them missing? They are obviously either dead or injured. This building was burnt to its shell in smithereens. They also used this word missing in the aftermath of the terror attacks in London that happened not long before the fire. I think it was like a week or 2 weeks or something like that. It's not like they were lost or abducted, is it? We all know that they are most likely burnt out bodies in a heap in the building or in a morgue or some kind of undisclosed secret location. People were looking desperately for their children, loved ones, and they were not allowed access to the building or to any information. It was like they were walking around like traumatized headless chooks. Theresa May eventually said that there would be a public inquiry into the matter. However, legal experts on the side of the people have said that public inquiries are internal and keep the government safe and protected. That it's a deliberate decision in order to protect themselves. It is better, actually, rather to have an inquest where an outsider looks into the situation and the residents of the building can get involved. It's much more fair for the people. But of course, no, the government want a public inquiry because that protects them. While the media portrayed survivors as having hotel accommodation, they didn't report how some people were being kicked out after a short stay. They were not given any food or clothing by authorities. Others were given accommodation with no hot water, and others no accommodation at all. It was local people that were taking them in and trying to work out where they were putting up notices, offering their place rooms to stay in. The government publicised its declaration after some time that it would offer £5,500 for each victim, but they didn't reveal how people would have to sign all these forms and that it would come out of some kind of future payments, or there was some kind of hook involved anyway. Further implications. Residents and locals feel that someone needs to be held to account for this. There is a lot of criticism also that it is a profit before people government, a materialist capitalist society with no care or regard for the poor. They are in outrage, but also wanting peaceful protest, as they are well aware that the media and government will paint them out to be violent thugs of society, even though they are so genuinely and justifyingly angry. They're trying to be peaceful at the same time. These are intelligent, heart-centered, well-spoken, caring people who want answers, equality and justice. They are over the fact that they have been ignored and treated like third-rate citizens as the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. You can understand why words and phrases are being thrown around like social cleansing, ethnic cleansing, gentrification, corporate manslaughter, profit before people, a crime against humanity, and what is hauntingly appearing like a Hunger Games society. Whether accidental or deliberate, you cannot deny that this was the result of gross negligence and the turning of a blind eye. This is mass murder at the very least by negligence, at the most deliberate manslaughter and cold-hearted social cleansing. To sicken matters even more, less than 2 weeks after the fire, there was a news announcement that the Queen of England will get a pay rise, of course, of £42.8 million. In Australian dollars, that would be $71.8 million. A lot of this money will be used to fund decade-long repairs to the Buckingham Palace. I think that's an absolute slap in the face, and it says it all. I'm all behind the people and the people's revolution. The prehistory about Grenfell Tower and its residents and their serious concerns about fire safety before the fire happened. Tenants had repeatedly voiced their concerns to the TMO, which is the Tenant Management Organisation of the Royal Borough, Kensington and Chelsea, about the condition of the building, the poor condition, and their deep concerns about fire safety. They had asked repetitively, again and again, but they were literally begging. However, they fell upon complete deaf ears and were completely ignored. Their legitimate concerns were not investigated during the regeneration works. 90% of tenants had signed a petition asking for an investigation into the TMO, the organisation that runs the building, because of their complete incompetence. The council, however, turned them down. 68% of tenants were bullied, harassed, threatened by this organisation and contractors doing the work. They were threatened that legal action would be taken against them, knowing very well that these people were not in any position to financially afford it. They tried to get lawyers, but legal aid had been cost cut, of course, and so they were in an utterly helpless situation. Here are some examples of some of the pre-existing building issues they were concerned about. There were pipework sticking out of the walls, power surges being ignored, unsafe location of boilers, fire escape safety and procedures they were concerned about. There was no fire equipment, no sprinklers, no working alarms. There was no working stairwell lighting, and 6 years ago a 10-year-old child sadly fell to his death in the building because of unsafe windows. Can you imagine? And that's just awful. The regeneration project. The government had put in place a regeneration program to make improvements, and so there was one in Kensington. There were two options: to either demolish the building or regenerate. Now you can actually see real evidence of a request put in to demolish the Grenfell building in 2014. This looks so incredibly suspicious, so you can understand how the tenants feel, especially when you put all the information pieces together. As a part of this regeneration program, the public library, an important resource for locals, was closed down and turned into a private school for the wealthy in the area. A public school was closed down and turned into a gym. A pet pampering business opened up. You get the idea. It was all about making the place for the rich. Locals say that instead of spending money on safety, which was a major concern for the residents that was repetitively ignored, it was spent on sprucing up the exterior aesthetic look of the building, as well as other buildings in the area, as a quick fix so they appear more pleasant looking for the gentrification of the area, for rich people who live in expensive, luxurious apartments nearby, and so that people and commuters have a nicer view on their way to Westfield, which, by the way, is allegedly owned by the Zionist elite. The cladding of the building. Residents are fuming that £10 million was reportedly spent on the building for its apparent regeneration, yet they can't see where the money was spent in the real ways that was direly needed. Instead, money went on cheap cladding, a type of exterior panelling that was placed on the outside of the building just for aesthetics, to make the building look prettier so that the rich people in luxurious apartments and walking by would be happy. Many criticised the regeneration works as being shoddy and with obvious cost-cutting issues. They chose this particular cladding for a cheaper price rather than spending only £2 more for each piece to make it fire safe. The cladding was made from a cost-cutting material that was later outrageously found out to be highly toxic and completely unsafe, a fire hazard, and the major cause for the fire to spread so rapidly up the building, right over and down the other side. It spread and burned rapidly, relentlessly, like wildfire, igniting and spreading upwards like a thin piece of paper, turning Grenfell Block unnecessarily into a towering inferno, killing all those people, and it's a total outrage. The cladding was made from aluminium composite with a polyurethane core and has been proven to be not only highly combustible but also highly toxic, which people knew before the event because it was banned in most European countries, including Germany, as well as rich Dubai and the USA, for the very reason that it's a clear fire safety hazard. The insulation manufacturer has confirmed that the cladding releases toxic gases if on fire because of its toxic levels of cyanide, which contributed to the toxic poisoning of the victims. Cyanide is reported to be one of the deadliest poisons there is, and cyanide poisoning has a host of symptoms, which on top of the severe smoke inhalation from this fire sped up the dying process of the victims stuck in the building or desperately trying to make their way down the stairs. The question has to be asked, is this cyanide poisoning also why so many people died in a heap on the stairwell and in their rooms? Some of the hospitals did actually officially report that they were treating some of the victims that came in from the fire from cyanide poisoning, so there is already proof of this. After the fire, other tower blocks with the same cladding was inspected and every single one of them failed safety tests. It is said that there are over 200 buildings. People were consequently evacuated from some of these buildings, causing a snowball effect of other social and housing issues. Why was the construction company using a banned product? Who's responsible for choosing it? Who do we hold accountable? And are there more parties involved? A criminal investigation ensues, but can we trust the government? Was there a deliberate negative secret agenda behind the fire? Were these victims pawns in a chessboard game by a sinister, elite, greedy, cold-blooded group of people? The cladding turned Grenfell into a cruel, unyielding, lethal incinerator. Was this a modern-day Holocaust? These are but some of the questions we need to ask, and we just can't let it go.